will begin in just a matter of days. So I want to stress the importance of taking what you hear tonight and turning it into action. Why? Because in the 2016 election, less than 1% of the electorate decided the vote in states like Pennsylvania, New Hampshire, and Michigan. In all of these states, the South Asian population was greater than 1%. So we very much can make a difference. In New Jersey, too, we still have a lot of work to do in mobilizing the South Asian and Muslim communities to vote. Past voting, we must also spread the message to each other. We all know that a WhatsApp message from a family member or a phone call from someone who goes to your masjid goes a very long way. So in these conversations, we need to highlight that Joe Biden has been a reliable supporter of the South Asian and Muslim communities. He's even published policy agendas that speak directly to us, which I'm sure our panelists will shed some light on tonight. Lastly, I want to thank the New Jersey State Democratic Committee for helping us with this event. And on that note, I would like to introduce Nabila Baptiste. Nabila currently serves as the New Jersey State Director for Biden for President. She has been with the New Jersey State Democratic Committee since 2018, where she started as an operations and events manager, and now she currently serves as a Deputy Executive Director. Nabila is a daughter of 2 immigrants, so through her work, she's been a staunch advocate and champion of those who do not have a seat at the table. Thank you so much for joining us, Nabila, and I'll throw it over to you now.
Thank you so much for the intro. And thank you guys for organizing this great event and a much needed conversation to be had within the community. As a brown Muslim girl, this means a lot to see amazing representation from the Freeholder to mayor to councilwoman. So this is phenomenal. So I took a leave of absence from the state party last week, and I jumped on the Biden campaign as state director. It's amazing. It's been an amazing few days, and I learned a ton of things that the Biden campaign is doing and trying to push. And the message that we're trying to do in the distributed organizing campaign is that it's not enough to organize within these battle states. We have to connect to millions of voters in those states. And we're really relying on those volunteers everywhere to help us connect with those people. And so a volunteer in New Jersey or a volunteer in California can have direct impact to and on places like Florida, Pennsylvania, New Hampshire, and Wisconsin. But that doesn't mean we're taking away from local races. So Freeholder, mayor, we're pushing on to the key local races and hyperlocal races here in Jersey as well. So we want to build off of local efforts that have already been put in place. So after people make local calls, reaching out to people to make sure that Milanowski, Kennedy, Mikey Sherrill, all of those competitive races, reaching out and letting them know the importance of voting and making sure that they know their voting rights. We want them to take that same energy and that fire in their belly to reach out to folks in these swing states and these battles, so people can participate in different ways in these calls. It's not just convincing somebody in the middle of Illinois why they should vote for Joe Biden. You will be calling people to let them know about voter protection laws, voter registration calls. You will also do VBM expansion and also relational organizing. And I believe that Hera touched on an important point is that it makes a huge difference for you to go into your WhatsApp and reach out to your local mosque and tell them the importance of voting. So the Vote Joe app that the Biden campaign has allows you to sync your contacts into that app, and you're able to sync your contacts into Van, and you're able to see who is registered to vote, who are frequent voters, when they voted, whether it's in the primary or last year, 2016, and you're able to send them a message through that app. Now, we don't collect that data. It's completely on to you. We just want to sync that, but that's an example of relational organizing, because conversation within within the kitchen table is vastly important. And that's how we as a community, we strive in communication with one another. And that's one way that we can make sure that we drive this election home and get that man out of the White House. One thing that we've been doing to make sure that we also support local races is that we partnered up with the DSC, and we created a volunteer hub on the website. Today was their soft launch. So a few of the candidates, key local races in a few counties are up. You would be able to see everything from a municipal race all the way to a countywide race, and you're able to read about them and sign up to volunteer. There's also a link right next to it to Victory 2020, where you can sign up to host a virtual phone bank or make some calls right there. And there's also training tools and guides, whether it's a video or a PDF that's there. So there are opportunities, and it is accessible to anyone and everyone that wants to go and make a difference. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, in the chat, I'll put my phone number, my email, my phone. It's literally always attached to my hip. So please feel free to reach out to me if you have anything or any questions about getting involved in Jersey and the expansion campaign. Thank you guys so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Nabila, for your resources, for your expertise that you've just shared. We'll definitely be keeping a lookout for the messages that you send in the chat. And also, just so everyone knows, at the end of this, we'll have information up for where you can find the information that Nabila just shared information on. With that being said, I now want to introduce our moderator for the night, Intashan Chowdhury. Intashan currently serves as the business administrator for the borough of Prospect Park, and he's one of the youngest in the state to hold that position. He's also the right-hand advisor to Prospect Park Mayor Mohammad Khairullah, the longest serving Arab and Muslim elected official in New Jersey. Intashan has been an active member of the New Jersey political world as a member of the New Leaders Council and the Passaic County Young Democrats. He is the proud son of Bangladeshi American immigrants, and I'm very honored to have him as a colleague here at South Asians for Biden, because he represents the very bright future for South Asians and in the political and government world here in New Jersey. So with that being said, I'll kick it over to Intashan.
Thank you so much, Hira, for the warm introduction. And if this wasn't virtual, I'd tell everybody to give a big round of applause to her. For those of you that don't know Hira does fantastic work in South Asians for Biden. She leads the way, and I learn from her every single day. And a lot of us in South Asians for Biden are grateful to have someone like her on our team. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. My name is Intashan Chowdhury, and welcome to our panel on engaging South Asian political leaders that are from Muslim descent, and as they will talk about their respective political journeys in correlation with the upcoming election. And we are pleased to be joined by some pioneers in the South Asian community, especially New Jersey and the country at large, that paved the way for South Asians like myself and many others. And they will share not only their experiences, but they'll share why this election is so important and so crucial, and why it's important to support the Biden and Harris ticket. I would like to begin by introducing some of our panelists. We can begin by introducing Mr. Farooq Mitha, who is a Biden 2020 senior advisor on Muslim engagement. In many ways, he's holding the torch for our Muslim community at large, and he was appointed as a senior advisor to the from the Joe Biden campaign, and has been a longstanding supporter of the campaign. And in that role, his many responsibilities include outreaching to the Muslim community, engaging the community on the issues that are important to our communities, and overall basically organizing the Muslim community at large to get out the vote in November. And with that being said, Farooq, we will start with you. And I did want to touch on the fact that he's also the co-founder of Mgage, a leading civic engagement organization, and he was also a co-founder of the Florida Muslim Chamber of Commerce. And we'll go one by one with each panelist, and we'll begin with the first question, and then we'll work our way with the other panelists, and we'll take it from there. So, Mr. Farooq, Mitha, thank you for joining us this evening. If you can, please share with us briefly your experience as a South Asian representative and what challenges you may have faced in your political journeys as a South Asian Muslim in politics. And if you can speak about why you are supporting the Biden-Harris ticket.
Yeah, assalamu alaikum. It's really great to be here. That's a loaded question, man. It's really nice to be here, though, and it's great to see a lot of friendly faces. It's really great to see Nabila. I didn't know that we had a Muslim American state director over there. So, I think that's the beauty of this, right? Like, I'm supporting the Biden campaign for a few reasons. One is because I think no matter who the Democratic nominee was, although I've been supporting Vice President Biden from the beginning, I would have backed pretty much anybody who was running in the general election, because this administration has been really so bad for our communities. And, when we have a candidate like Donald Trump, or a president at the time who was a candidate, who wins the presidency on the backs of Muslims, that is really a call to action for us, right? It doesn't matter to some degree who the candidate is. We have to show as a community that we can rally and we can deliver a knockout blow to somebody who politically scapegoats our communities, puts in something like the Muslim ban, who nobody ever thought, at least I didn't think that would ever happen if he won. So I think that's one part of it. I think the other part of it, though, is that in Joe Biden, we have a really great candidate who's got the most progressive platform, really in the history of the Democratic Party, or maybe since FDR. We have a candidate who believes in science, who has a plan for how to get out of this crisis we're in with the virus, who wants to help tackle student debt, climate change, criminal justice reform, immigration, all of the challenges that our nation is facing today, and do it in partnership with us as Muslims. You see me in this role, but I just met Nabila tonight, but there's dozens of Muslims across the country that are involved in this campaign as staff, as policy advisors. You saw Joe Biden speak at the Million Muslim Vote Summit, give a video message to ISNA, and be very direct about his willingness and desire to partner with us. So I think that's a really big deal. Right now, we have nothing. I challenge anyone to give me one Muslim American who is in the Trump administration. I don't think you'll find one, or even one who wants to be. So I think those are some of the reasons I'm supporting Joe Biden. There have been a lot of challenges in this role. Some of them have been internal, I would say. I'm always in there scrapping and pushing and advocating for all of the issues that matter to our communities, whether it's domestic policy issues or foreign policy issues. And I've been welcomed, and my opinion is well received, but there's still a process, and I'm in there, and it's a challenge, right? You're sometimes I'm the only voice in the room from the Muslim community, and that's better than before when there was no voices. I'll say another challenge sometimes, and I'm going to be honest, is our community. And I think that we really need to mobilize and support people from our communities that are doing these types of roles, whether it's people in the Biden campaign or whether it's people like the Freeholder or the mayor. Like, we have to understand that when people are in these positions, it's hard, and it's much harder when we tear each other down rather than try to build each other up. And it's disappointing to see that happen more often than I thought it would happen. So I think that's something that as a community, we need to get better at, and we need to make sure that we're uplifting each other as much as possible, because we have to do this together. No one person can solve all of our ummah's challenges. It's impossible. And we have a very diverse Muslim American community, and we need everybody on board and inshallah on the same page to make this happen.
Thank you, Brother Farooq. And I did want to give you a quick follow-up question, and it ties with a little bit of what you're doing. Being on the front line for our Muslim American community, representing us on the campaign, what are some of the issues you are hearing from the community at large to be raised with the campaign, and what are some of the hurdles that you might be seeing that we need to overcome to come together for November? So I would start with the issues that you're probably hearing on the front line.
Yeah, it depends, to be honest. It's varied, right? We have a very diverse community. If I meet with South Asian Muslims, I hear about what's happening in Kashmir or in India with the CAA. If I talk to Arab Americans, I hear about the Middle East, Yemen, or Palestine, or Syria. If I talk to young people, I hear about climate change, tuition. So it's very diverse. If I talk to African American Muslims, there's a lot of domestic issues that come up on tuition and education and entrepreneurship for minorities and things like that. So it's a lot, because I'm not an expert in every single issue. So, and I'm not going to pretend to be. But we have some really great people in the community that are involved and that can help with a lot of these things. One big thing that I heard a lot about was the CVE program, which was something that a lot of Muslim Americans did not like from the Obama administration. Trump rebranded that program and called it the TVTP program. And actually, if you go to our Arab American agenda, the Biden campaign has committed to ending that program and taking a fresh look at programs like that, and consulting with communities like ours that have been historically negatively impacted by those kind of programs. That's one example of like something that we've been able to accomplish through the engagement. A lot of Arab Americans in Michigan specifically cared about the fact that if you're an Arab American small business owner, you are not recognized as a socially disadvantaged business for federal government contracting. If you go to our Arab American agenda, you will see that we've committed to doing a study that will help us collect the data to see if we can make a recommendation to have that happen. But then there's a whole host of things. If you go to our Muslim agenda, you'll see really strong statements about what's happening to the Uyghurs in China. Our campaign just came out and called that genocide, which was a really strong statement to be made to build on what we've already been saying for a while, but also on Palestine, on Kashmir, and a whole host of other issues. So it's a little bit of everything. And what are our challenges? Our challenges, I think, are the bigger picture of what needs to happen in this election. I understand that a lot of these issues are important and they're not going to be solved in one cycle either necessarily, but we have to understand that the future of this nation is on the ballot. Our values, what we stand for, our constitutional rights. And if we don't win this election, God help us. So I hope that people can really see that if we have somebody who will work with us, like a Joe Biden, and partner with us, we can advance the agenda on all these issues far more than what we can right now. And it's really important for people to see that.
Thank you, Brother Farooq. I do want to move on to our next panelist that we have with us. Joining us from the great county of Passaic, my freeholder, Passaic County Freeholder Assad Akhter. And for those of you that don't know him, Freeholder Akhter was appointed to fill a vacancy in 2016, and since then was elected twice to fill the unexpired term and the expired term in 2018. And he's the first South Asian and first Muslim elected in Passaic County history to the Freeholder Board. So prior to becoming a freeholder, our relationship, Freeholder, actually started back when you were working for Congressman Pascrell, who's a huge fighter in Washington, D.C. for the state of New Jersey. And he understood the nuances of policy and groundwork and what needs to be done in terms of crafting good legislation. And Freeholder Akhter was actually the chief of staff and a legislative director between the Washington, D.C. office and the state office in Paterson. And he's worked with many communities like the borough of Prospect Park, city of Paterson, up in northern New Jersey in Congressional District 9. And he's oversaw a lot of great work that Congressman Pascrell has been a part of, such as the Affordable Care Act, working on the American Recovery and Investment Act of 2009, the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act, just to name a few. And I think, Freeholder Doctor, you bring an interesting dynamic because you were on the Hill. So you know what it means to have a partner at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, and what we've been going through, and the challenges probably Congressman Pascrell and other representatives are going through towards getting the job done. So I ask you, please share us briefly with your experience as a South Asian representative and what challenges you have faced in your political journey as a South Asian Muslim in politics, and if you can speak to about why you are supporting the Biden-Harris ticket.
Sure. Well, assalamu alaikum and good evening, everybody. Thank you for that very generous introduction. Intashan, you know, you and I have been lucky to know each other for many years, and I'm grateful for that. And I am grateful for all the young people like you. I'm no longer in the young category. I've been out of that for a while. So I'm grateful for all the young people like Nabila and others who are coming up in this political arena. And I'm grateful for it, honestly, because when I was coming up, there were really very few role models to look up to. You know, I'm the son of immigrants who came from Pakistan, immigrated here, did their job, paid their taxes, worked hard, raised their children, and you know, did their duty as Americans, but most importantly as parents and community members. And they didn't think it was their, you know, they didn't feel quite politically involved, or feel like there was their place maybe to be politically involved, like a lot in our community, especially those who came from other countries where that freedom wasn't necessarily given or asked for. So, you know, when I was coming up, I wanted to, when I went to Seton Hall in New Jersey, I really wanted to, I realized at some point that I really wanted to work on Capitol Hill. I wanted to go to Washington, D.C., and it seemed like a far off dream. It's not what my parents wanted for me. It's not what they expected of me. I was able to land an entry-level job on the Hill, and I spent 13 years working on Capitol Hill. And, you know, when I was in college, 9/11 happened. That was a seminal moment in our lives for any of us, especially those of us who are in New York and New Jersey, to witness that. And then, of course, as a Muslim American, to know the repercussions of that. And when I started working on the Hill a couple years later, when President Bush was reelected, to know that the Patriot Act and so many other actions that were taken specifically and discriminatorily to profile Muslim Americans, it was a scary time. And it was very scary. I remember how disappointing and upsetting it was that he was reelected president and so close a vote. And what we felt as Muslim Americans. And I will tell you that second Bush term was even a bigger disaster than his first term, if you remember the Iraq War. So for all those who are thinking that it couldn't get worse, let me tell you that a Trump administration that no longer has to worry about reelection, that no longer has to worry about polls, that is completely untethered. Trust me when I tell you it can and will get worse if Donald Trump is reelected president, not just for Muslim Americans, for all of us across the board. So I was also lucky enough to work on Capitol Hill when the Democrats had a majority in Congress and President Obama was elected. We had passed the Affordable Care Act. We passed the Dodd-Frank Act. We passed the stimulus bill, which rescued, when President Obama came into office, he had 750,000 jobs lost a month. Every month, 50,000 jobs a month, until he reversed that trend and had, I believe, 20 plus months of job growth. So when you hear about the Trump economy, that's the Obama economy that he's picking off the back of. President Obama inherited a dumpster fire when he came into office, and Donald Trump inherited a good economy, which he has done nothing with and has given more away to the rich and less to the poor. So I've been able to see the good and the bad from my experience around Capitol Hill. I was elected the same year and was sworn in fact, a week or two before Donald Trump was sworn in as president. I was elected or selected only a few weeks after the last November election when Donald Trump was elected. And I'm grateful for the support our community showed. And in many ways, the people who supported me, not just Muslim Americans here, but people throughout the community, people supported me in part because they said, we are disgusted by Donald Trump's language against Muslim Americans. We want to send a message that we are unafraid to have one of our county representatives be a Muslim American. And it was a signal and a sign of growth. So what I'll say is for why I support the Biden-Harris ticket, it has never been more clear our choice as Muslim Americans or as Americans, period. It has never been more clear our choice. If we can't be involved now, then we can't say that we care about the country we live in, and all the freedoms we've been given. And let me tell you, when I look around at the Muslim world, if you look around to every country where Muslim Americans reside, especially in Muslim majority countries, there is no country where Muslim Americans have more freedom, have more ability to impact their society than right here, United States of America. So I can't make a religious declaration, but I do think it's sinful for the idea that there would be any Muslim Americans of faith who would think that for all that has been given to us, that we do not owe something back to our fellow Muslims and our fellow citizens. And so we have to be involved in this campaign. Joe Biden is the right choice. He showed that by picking Kamala Harris as his vice president. And it's never been more clear our choice. And now is the time for us to take action. So thank you, Intashan.
Great opening, Freeholder, and I'm glad you brought up the vice presidential candidate, Senator Kamala Harris, because we will get to that a little later tonight. I did want to just quickly ask you a follow-up. Based on your experience on the Hill, can you just quickly just tell us how much of the gap do we have to close putting someone like Joe Biden in office, and why is it important to have someone like that in office to close that gap because of the mess that we were left in with the Trump administration?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've seen that, first of all, if you haven't read the excerpts from Bob Woodward's book, which is about to come out, the stories came out today, and you hear what Republicans who signed up to work for the Trump administration are saying about his presidency and about his acumen and his ability, his lack of caring, his lack of attention, the true incompetence of this administration, then you need to read that and understand that those folks who are saying that have nothing to gain. They have nothing to gain politically or financially or otherwise. They are saying this, even though I disagree with them, they are Republicans, and I disagree with them on policy. They are at least having the guts to come forward and say what is well known about this administration. And so I will tell you that no matter how strong Congress you have, no matter how big a majority you have in either house, none of it will matter if you have an administration that is led by an incompetent and I would say corrupt president, morally corrupt, certainly. And so if Joe Biden is in that office, the most powerful position in the world, we can at least rest easy that we have a competent and capable president, and he's somebody who has the experience, who has the emotional intelligence, and I think he has the right. I think he has the right balance of understanding where we are as a nation and where we need to go. Most importantly, he's unafraid to look at where we need to go and not just playing to everybody's fears, which is what we've seen for the last 4 years. So we need a president, no matter who is in the Congress, and I hope the Democrats take back the Senate and keep the House, but no matter who's in the Congress, we need a president and administration that actually wants progress.
Thank you so much, Freeholder, and that was very well put. We're going to move on to Mayor Sadaf Jaffar. Dr. Sadaf Jaffar is actually a near and dear friend to many of us in the South Asian community and Muslim community at large. Mayor Jaffar is a mayor, right? So as a town manager, we can understand that the task that Mayor Jaffar has running a municipality every single day is quite difficult because at the end of the day, all politics and all government is local, right? And we understand the role that she has to play to respond to the needs of her constituents at the local level. The buck stops at municipal government. And everything that happens at Washington, D.C. can carry over to the municipal level. And the challenges in front of Mayor Jaffar can come quite daunting at times. And just to give you a little bit of background of who Mayor Jaffar is, Dr. Sadaf Jaffar is an elected official. She's a scholar and activist. Mayor Jaffar is the mayor of Montgomery Township, New Jersey. And she was elected to the Montgomery Township Committee in 2017 and in January 2019. And this was a sight to be seen if you went there. It was like a sea of VIPs, and it was a historic evening. It was quite emotional for someone like myself. She was sworn in as a mayor, becoming the first South Asian woman to serve for a municipality in New Jersey, and the first Muslim woman in the entire United States of America to hold such a post. And throughout her my mayor often tells me it's not all about, making history. It's all about delivery. And right away, Mayor Jaffar got to work, right? And she's been, focusing a lot of her efforts on protecting the health of the community during the COVID-19 crisis, fostering transparency and civic engagement. She's been doing a whole host of activities for her township, and it should be commended for. She's also an educator. She's a postdoctoral research associate in the South Asian Studies at Princeton University, and she teaches courses on South Asian Studies at Princeton University. And has a great background on a lot of different aspects in terms of education and being an activist. And I turn it over to you, Mayor Jaffar, if you can share with us briefly your experience as a South Asian representative and what challenges you have faced in your political journeys as a South Asian Muslim in politics. If you can speak about also why you are supporting the Biden-Harris ticket and why it means so, why it matters for a municipality like Montgomery Township.
Thank you so much. So, my political career was somewhat galvanized by the Trump campaign and election. So I had thought about local politics earlier, and I actually completed the Emerge New Jersey program in 2014, which is for women from the Democratic Party who want to run for office. And so I was already kind of interested, but I had never run for office until I was asked to run in 2016 in my township because the incumbent Republicans were running unopposed. And it was seeing the hateful rhetoric of the Trump campaign saying, quote, I think Islam hates us, and all of his anti-immigrant rhetoric against specifically Mexican immigrants, saying that, they're rapists, they're criminals, and some, I assume, are good people. I mean, none of what he's done, the family separation, the Muslim ban, none of what he's done should really have shocked us. And I think this is why people were so sad and fearful when he was elected, because we just didn't know what a person who had such hateful rhetoric on the campaign trail could actually do. And now we've seen it. And we've seen, I think the number one issue for everyone in America really is COVID-19. We have had 190,000 Americans died. And, all of the research and reports that we've seen has shown that just some more responsible action, not that it had to be perfect, but being responsive, having a plan, having something in terms of providing PPE, that would have saved so many lives. And as a local elected official, and I think every elected official who's in office right now, trying to protect your community from this horrible disease has been top of mind. And as we saw the virus getting closer to us, realizing that the federal government really had no response, and even beyond having no response, was going to try to undermine the efforts of governors and mayors and other elected officials, it's been terrifying to see that. I feel a sense of responsibility, though luckily, and due to a lot of hard work on behalf of the residents and the professionals of our township, we have a very low rate of infection and fatality as compared to other communities. It is heartbreaking to hear that someone in your community has passed away. And that has to be one of the hardest days of my life when I received the call that we'd had our first fatality in Montgomery Township from COVID-19. So I would say that, as an elected official, one of the reasons and the main reason why I'm supporting Biden-Harris as our ticket is that they will have a response. They will be responsible. They will listen to scientists. They will listen to public health experts. And being from the South Asian community, we have so many people in our community who are doctors, who are medical professionals, and who many of them have become infected. Some of them have died. And so it's something that's very close to our hearts. Secondly, it's the civil unrest, the hatred that he has fostered in this community. The people he's surrounded himself with, who are avowed white supremacists, who are anti-immigrant, who've not only the Muslim ban wanted to ban all international students, stop H-1B visas, all of the things that are basically family reunification, wanting to stop that. So all of the things that are the lifeblood of our communities, he has wanted to cut off and stop. And, no matter whether you're Muslim or you're not Muslim, the hate doesn't just, stay within boundaries. When you foster hate, it impacts everyone. And we know that because of the fact, going back to the time after September 11th, so many of those people who'd been attacked and killed were not Muslim. They were other South Asians, for example, from the Sikh community, because of the way that they had been misidentified as Muslim. Similarly, we saw, someone being misidentified as Muslim, an Indian American being shot and killed. I believe it was in Kansas. So hate doesn't stay within boundaries. And so we all need to do what we can to stop the hate. And the best way we can do that is get out and vote and encourage everyone we know to vote Biden-Harris. And I mean, in terms of how this has impacted me personally, I was nervous about being identified as the first Muslim woman mayor. And when we realized that was the case, my friends were saying, we should do a press release. And I was just like, no, let's not do that. I don't know if we need to do that. And then, slowly the story gained steam. And then I started being featured on some Trump blogs and getting loads of hate via Twitter. And actually, it really wears away at you to know that there are so many hateful people out there who are being emboldened by the president of your country and who affiliate with him. So they would say something hateful about Muslims. Muslims need to be eradicated from the country, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then they'd put MAGA or Trump, so that is horrifying, and that should not be the case. And it's not fair to any of us, definitely any of us who are adults on this call, but it's certainly not fair to the children growing up in this country to have such a hateful leader.
Thank you, Mayor Jaffar. That was very well put. And I think in many ways we can respect your leadership, especially during this pandemic, even though we might not be receiving the same kind of leadership at the federal level. It's communities like yours that are bearing the brunt of that lack of leadership that we see at the federal level. I do want to move on to our next panelist, and we do have a few more questions to go around, but I do want to introduce all the panelists. We do have some youngsters on our panel. We have Mussab Ali. So I'm still the youngest here right now this evening, but Mussab beats me out by, I guess, a couple of months. And Mussab Ali, for those of you that don't know him, he's the Jersey City Board of Education member. Mussab Ali is a Phi Beta Kappa graduate from Rutgers University, Newark, majoring in biology and economics. He was a Harry S. Truman Scholar and a Schwartzman Scholar this past year. Actually, he had to leave school, correct, in China, and he had to actually come back because of the pandemic. And he recently, when he got elected back in a record margin in 2018, he was the youngest elected official in Jersey City history, as well as the youngest Muslim elected official in the entire country. And in that position, he chaired the Facilities Committee, the Technology Committee, as well as Transportation Safety and Security Committee. And in those roles, he's fought for many changes and was the student voice in many ways for the school. Mussab is also, for those of you that don't know him, I sit on a board with him called the Ali Leadership Institute. So it's an organization that paves the way for the younger people to get involved in many ways in whatever industry or field, and it kind of builds up on their skills. So someone like Mussab Ali, who is relatively young, is trying to consistently pay it forward. And I ask you, Commissioner Ali, please share with us briefly your experience as a South Asian representative and what challenges you have faced in your political journeys as a South Asian Muslim in politics. And if you can also speak about why you are supporting the Biden-Harris ticket.
Sure. So first of all, thanks again, Intashan, for such a great introduction. As Intashan mentioned, when I got elected in 2017 in Jersey City, I was 20 years old. And so I was the first Muslim elected in our city. And at the time, the youngest Muslim elected official in the country. And actually, just like Mayor Jaffar, my political career was kind of galvanized by Donald Trump's candidacy as well. And so for me, it hits home really hard when I think about President Trump, because when he was running in 2015 and he talked about 9/11, he made a quote when he was in a rally in Alabama. And he said, "I remember when there were thousands and thousands of Muslims cheering in Jersey City, New Jersey." So literally in my hometown, the Muslims in my community, he went and attacked them at a rally. And the next day he went on television and they asked him again. They said, "Listen, we looked through all the records. There's no records of people cheering on TV, right? And obviously people were dramatically impacted by the events that occurred." And he doubled down, right? I mean, we've known this president to be a liar, and that's what he did. He said, "No, the people in Jersey City, the Muslims in Jersey City were cheering after 9/11. And so at the time, I was 18 years old. I really didn't know much about politics. I was, gearing up for medical school, the way my South Asian parents wanted. But I decided, you know what? Why don't I try to get involved at a local level? Why don't I try to do something in my community as a response to show, what are Muslim Americans really like, right? What is our leadership ability like, and how can more people interact with Muslims and learn what we're about? And so that's what ended up leading me to run for office, eventually get elected, and be fortunate enough to be in the position that I'm in today. But the biggest thing that I want to speak to about the Biden-Harris campaign, I think the biggest thing is, especially when we look at the vice presidential candidate, Kamala Harris, she's someone who's also broken a lot of boundaries, just like so many of us here, right? So many of us here have been trailblazers, as a mayor, as a freeholder, and Intashan, even you as a BA, the work that you've done. So we understand that, when you're that trailblazer, when you're the person that breaks that barrier, there's more eyes on you. There are so many people who are looking at you. They want you to fail. They don't want you to be successful. And there are so many people out there who are just antagonizing, whatever decisions you're making, whatever initiatives you're sponsoring. And because of that, I know that someone like Kamala Harris is someone who's been through that, right? She's been through having all those people, keep that extra eye on her, the extra attention on her. And despite that, she's been rising up in the ranks, from attorney general to becoming a senator and now becoming a vice presidential candidate. And I think it's important for us to recognize, what it means to have trailblazers like that, both from the South Asian community and at large. And I think that we should do all that we can to support those kinds of people, because those are the people that inspire us, right? They're the people we look up to and say, wow, like, I want my kids to look at these people and think that, they can do it too.
So thank you, Commissioner Ali. And real quick, as a follow-up, can you shed light a little bit on what you're hearing in the younger pool in terms of how energized they may be, especially in the South Asian community going into November, and why this is so important to get Biden and Harris in office, and how our voice is very important leading into this election?
Sure. So I think the biggest thing, especially, with schools shut down, right, is I think so many young people have been so frustrated with this administration's response to COVID. As Mayor Jaffar was saying, I mean, kids are not being able to see their friends, right? I mean, you have all these sorts of social bonds that are breaking throughout our country. And that's a direct result of the current administration. I mean, you look at a country like New Zealand, where, sure, I'll admit they're a lot smaller than we are, but they've been, I think, more than 150 days COVID-free. And that's something that could have been a reality for America. And I think a lot of young people are starting to realize, we need people in office who are competent, who are educated, who understand, how to take responsibility. And, you don't have to be, someone who's graduated from a ton of schools to see what it takes to be competent. And I think young people understand that. And I think they are really, really excited to vote for people who we think have the acumen to make the right decisions.
Thank you, Commissioner, so much. Moving on to our final panelists, we have Cherry Hill Democratic Committeewoman Ani Anjum. Committeewoman Ani Anjum was born in Pakistan and migrated to the United States as a small child. She has lived all over the United States and is now settled in New Jersey with her husband and daughter. As a practicing attorney, Ani sees herself as an advocate for her community and hopes to bring awareness on issues that face South Asian Americans. She has been serving as Cherry Hill's Democratic Committee member since 2018. Ms. Ani Anjum, thank you for joining us. If you can, please share with us briefly your experience as a South Asian representative and what challenges you have faced in your political journeys as a South Asian Muslim in politics. And if you can also speak to about why you are supporting the Biden-Harris ticket. Yeah, perhaps, no, yeah, we can't hear you. Oh, okay, so I guess that's a cue to continue. Okay, so it looks like Ani's having some technical difficulties. We'll come back to her. We would like to probably move on to question 2, and I'll turn this over to Mayor Jaffar. Being a part of a large South Asian Muslim community in New Jersey, we still do not have much political representation or political power. What can we do as a community to get our voices on our concerns and issues heard? What is your advice on getting the South Asian Muslim community mobilized in all races, local, state, and federal?
Thank you so much. I would say that the first thing that we need to do is to reject cynicism about the political system. And that runs deep, I think, in both the South Asian community more broadly and the Muslim community more broadly, where people just think, well, what difference does it make? Everyone in politics is kind of not so great. But I'm here to say that there are great people in politics, and I'm not going to speak to myself, but there are a number of my fellow panelists here tonight who are working really hard to serve their community in the best way possible. So the first thing I would say is just reject cynicism and get involved. I would recommend getting involved at the local level. Connect with your local party. Help support a local candidates campaign, because when you get involved at that local level, people are always actually looking for candidates or district leaders or other sorts of roles. And that's when you'll kind of figure out how the nitty-gritty works, how to get your policy interests across. And I remember I was shocked when I was just a candidate for Township Committee in one of the 565 towns in New Jersey, when I was a candidate, and I got to meet, the gubernatorial candidate, Phil Murphy, multiple times in 2017. And I knew that if I had a serious issue that I wanted to discuss with him, I could. So it's not that you have to just shoot straight for, federal level politics or state level politics to have an impact. That local level is really a place where you can make an impact, make sure that your values are being represented, that your community is being represented. So I think that would be kind of my basic advice. Don't be cynical and try to get involved at the local level. That's really a good place to start and learn how things are actually done.
Thank you, Mayor Jaffar. I do appreciate your comments, and I did wanted to ask you, in terms of political representation or political power for the South Asian community, why do you think there are issues and barriers that we may be facing in terms of getting our respective seat at the table? I think Congressman Keith Ellison was famous to say, if you're not having a seat at the table, you're on the menu. So how do you avoid being on the menu and you're doing the best to overcome these challenges to get a respective seat at the table to have your voices heard in situations like this for Biden and Harris?
Well, I think that, a lot of times politics is something that runs in the family. I've learned, in my experience, a lot of times the other elected officials I know will say things like, oh yeah, my dad was the mayor growing up, or my mom was on the school board. And a lot of times immigrant communities won't have that, or communities that haven't had a lot of political power, it's not going to run in the family. And so research has shown that if you really want to diversify any field, having formal training and mentorship programs is really helpful. And that's why I noted that I had participated in the Emerge program. There are other things like the New American Leaders Project, and that people can connect with, that can provide that training that is really helpful. And I'm sure that all of those of us who are in elected office would be more than happy to serve as mentors for people, and I try my best to help support candidates who want to run. So We need formal training and mentorship programs. And basically, we just need to run. I think women and minority candidates, they win elections at the same rate as white men, but they just don't run as often. So we really need to work on those pipeline programs, helping people understand that they have just as much of a right to run as anyone else, and that there are support networks out there for them. And I mean, I think that some of the fears are justified. When I ran for office, I did have a flyer that said that my ideas were dangerous and extreme, printed and sent all over my township. And when I won, the first comment on my opponent's post was, I'm an American and some Indian's going to tell me what to do now. So we do face that, and it's unfortunate, but we power through it. And the more often people see diverse leaders, like I know when I first started having people call me mayor, I was like looking around the room like, who are you talking? Oh, me. Oh yeah, that's me. But I think it was also kind of a weird thing for other people to get used to, like, oh, mayor, but they did. And I'm proud to be a part of that change in what people think when they think about a person in a position of power.
Mayor, that was quite inspirational. And I'm telling you, I think for a lot of South Asians at large, South Asian women, South Asian Muslim women, we can attest to the fact that your story is inspirational. And I think your comments will be well taken for anybody that's trying to get a seat at the table and trying to mobilize themselves to have their voices heard going into November. I see we have Ani back on. We had some technical difficulties, but if you want to share with us, if you want to tackle the first two questions, the first one being, please share with us briefly your experience as a South Asian representative and what challenges you may have faced in your respective political journeys as a South Asian Muslim in politics. And if you can speak to about why you are supporting the Biden and Harris ticket.
Thank you so much for having me. I know how my daughter felt now all day long. She was in and out of, school like this. So, but technical issues, I'm glad we overcame those. So I had no ambition of going into politics initially. It was something I stumbled upon, like Nabila had mentioned, and I think Farooq touched upon it. I am a daughter of immigrants, and my parents came to America, to live the American dream. You work hard and then you get to play hard. Except now they're working hard, but they're always nervous about what's going to happen tomorrow, what's going to happen. America is the best country in the whole world. Where do you go from here when the best country in the world starts getting shaky? And that's when I decided that if there was change going to be made, it had to start with this generation, with us. I don't want to focus too much on everything bad that Trump is doing, because everybody has touched upon it. And I think we, as not just Muslims, but as South Asians in general, see that. I think what I would like to focus on more is getting Joe Biden elected, because he is the best bet we have. He is what we have to hold on to. I think one of the challenges I face in my community is not everybody feels that their voice matters, that they're just one vote, that their participation in some community politics, it's just at the grassroots level, and that it won't come to anything significant. However, I would like to really, really, really emphasize that everything that really matters in our community starts at the grassroots level. I always tell everybody, you're not just a mom, you are a mom. You can get involved. I mean, it starts at the PTA and then move your way up. And that's how you get to know everybody. And that's how everybody gets to know you as a Muslim, as a South Asian. And I think that's probably the biggest challenge that I'm facing right now, even getting my own community. And in South Jersey, we have a much smaller Muslim and South Asian community compared to Central and North Jersey. So that's probably been the biggest struggle that I've had. It's just trying to mobilize people at the grassroots level.
Thank you, Ani. We do definitely appreciate your comments. We're going to move on to or stay on question 2 and open the floor to the other panelists to answer as well. Being a part of a large South Asian Muslim community in New Jersey, we still do not have much political representation or political power. What can we do as a community to get our voices on our concerns and issues heard? What is your advice getting the South Asian Muslim community mobilized and all races, local, state, and federal? Take it away, Commissioner Mussab Ali, and then we'll go to Freeholder Akhter, and then we'll go to Farooq Mitha.
Yeah, I'll try to be really brief. I think that the biggest thing that we really need to do is just build coalitions. And I think people need to realize, right, like, you know, Muslim Americans in America make up 1% of the population. 1%. I mean, let's say in New Jersey, that's like 6 or 7%. I mean, you don't win an election with 6% of the vote. That's just not the way it works. And so what you have to do is you have to build coalitions. You have to look for other people who share the same values as you, who share, you know, similar policy ideas with you. And you have to be willing to, you know, build those bridges. And I think what's really starking to me is if you look across the country and you look at these places where there is rampant Islamophobia, the biggest things that you realize in these communities is most of these people don't know any Muslims. They simply have never met Muslims. They don't understand what Muslims are like. And I think our responsibility is to, you know, make those bridges, right? Build those coalitions, because that's the way that we win.
Freeholder, did you want to take a stab at it as well? You're muted, Freeholder.
I'll just I've had a senior moment there. I'll just piggyback off what Mussab said because he put it perfectly that it can't just, you know, even though we should take pride, and everyone should, in their ethnic backgrounds, in their faith backgrounds, whatever it is that you feel identifies you, you should absolutely take pride in that. But if you are only looking at yourself from the lens from which you look, that is the epitome of, you know, what we talk about when we talk about privilege. You know, privilege in this country is not just white privilege. There's plenty of privilege for Muslim Americans in this country. You know, there's burden to being Muslim American too, but there is also privilege to it, and what we have and what we've been given. And so, you know, if you look at things only from the lens of being Muslim American, then you should not expect anyone to stand up for you when it comes your time. We saw that after 9/11. Many Muslim Americans who were, quite honestly, the Muslim American community voted more for George W. Bush than they voted for Al Gore in that election. And that was in part because many Muslim Americans felt that the Republican Party better represented them. But they saw the truth after 9/11, and they saw the truth of how we were treated and how we were profiled and how we were targeted. And they understood that our civil liberties and our rights were not so easily, they were, you know, they could be stripped away if we weren't protected by others. So I think since that time, and I think since this administration, we have reached out to others, and we have to be concerned about, you know, the issues that people want to talk about out there are basic issues: the economy, schools, our roads, basic meat and potato issues. If we're always only talking about, you know, foreign policy, you know, Muslims abroad, absolutely critical issues for the next president, but that can't be the first place we start, because quite honestly, not everybody can relate to that, but we are all affected. We're all affected, as Mayor Jaffar put out. But when crisis hits America, like coronavirus, and we don't have a president who stands up for Americans and stands up for what's right, lives have been lost because of the incompetence of this administration. So you have to remind people of that. You have to talk to people about what concerns them, and you have to listen. You can't just talk, you have to listen. And sometimes all of us, especially those of us who are public officials, have trouble doing that. So remember to listen and not just talk.
Farooq, Brother Farooq.
Yeah, I'll just be brief. I piggyback on what everybody said. I think one thing that we don't talk about enough is building strong political institutions. We need more, obviously, people running for office and winning, and we've done a good job of that over the last 4 years. And we've got, you know, good individuals who are very engaged and prominent in the political space. But the last piece of that, I think, is building strong political institutions. And I think once we have that, and we have people engaged from that view as well, the combination of elected officials and staffers plus individuals plus institutions, a good recipe for success for our communities.
And I didn't want to miss Ani on the second question. Ani, if you wanted to take away and take a stab at it as well, we'd be honored.
Yes, I'm also going to add to what everybody else said. I think coalitions and coming together as a community, if we're talking about Muslims, coming together as Muslims in general, not I'm this sect, I'm that sect, and whatnot. We have a group here called the Muslim Federation of South Jersey. All Muslim communities come together and they make change, and it actually is so beautiful to see everybody from the different mosques or all the different sects come together, and that voice is so much louder than just one group. Just like I personally am very familiar with UPNA, and when I see a group like that make an impact, and a huge impact, I mean, we as South Asians, minorities, imagine what we could do if we all came together. So I think making coalitions, putting our own personal differences aside, I think that's probably the biggest thing that's going to help. Putting your own personal issues aside and coming together for the greater good. Because if we don't, it's just not going to come together.
Thank you, Ani, so much. It looks like, just glancing at the chat, panelists, you have a lot of fans. A lot of people are loving what you're saying. We wish we could keep this going all night, but we have a few more questions, and I do want to get to the questions from the audience. And for those that do have questions from the audience, and we have quite a lot of participants or attendees engaging in this great conversation, please go ahead and share your question in the Q&A section. I want to get to question number 3. A few weeks ago, history was made with the selection of Senator Kamala Harris as the first Black woman and first South Asian American woman to accept the Democratic Party's vice presidential nomination. Her selection speaks volumes of Vice President Joe Biden's commitment to diversity and inclusion, and not only choosing a woman, but a woman of color as his running mate. What do you think women of color, specifically South Asian women, will play in a Biden-Harris administration, and why? Ani, I'll turn it to you, and then I'll go to Mayor Jaffar. Mayor Jaffar, especially the fact that you made history, I think you're going to have some great things to say, and same thing to you, Ani, and then we'll work our way to Mussab, and then Freeholder, Akhter, and then Farooq again.
I mean, this is history has been made, and I think it's like our responsibility to make sure that this continues, that this goes on. I think we as women in the community are already doing so much, moving and shaking grounds that we've never done so before. I think also a lot of, as a mother, I think it's very important for me to recognize that if I don't do something about what I have in front of me right now, I'm going to be passing the problem on to the next generation. And they may not, the way things are going right now, and with the white supremacy and the political arena, they may not have the same opportunity I have with me at this very moment. Therefore, I think it's so important to get involved, even if it's at the grassroots level, even if your face is not all over social media, but you're getting involved and you know that you're doing something for your community and your own kids.
Mayor Jaffar?
Well, I will say that I had a really good feeling about Kamala Harris from the beginning. I've just followed her career, and I think that she is really compelling. And I do think that there is this sense of camaraderie with her with her rise and breaking through so many different glass ceilings. And when we saw the announcement that she had been selected as a vice presidential nominee, I did turn to my daughter and ask her if she might want to be president someday, because it seems so much more possible now. Because it does take those efforts. It takes lots of different cracks to shatter glass ceilings. And we have to have our forefathers and our foremothers in these different roles for us to feel like we're empowered to be there. So I think that this bodes very well for inclusivity. It's something that we can feel really proud of, that a person who is just very relatable to our communities is there on the ticket. I love posting photos of her with her family in shalwar-kameez or saris, photos that are very similar to what our families might have had when we were kids. And maybe we didn't feel like that was really representative of being part of the American story. And maybe we didn't want to share those pictures with our classes. I know that for me growing up, being usually the only South Asian, the only Muslim girl in my classes, I definitely felt different. And so having that difference be part of the American story so prominently is very, very meaningful for me. And I think for a lot of us. And it kind of also speaks to the types of people that Joe Biden will surround himself with. No one person runs a government. That person is a representative. They definitely are very, very important, but they don't do every single thing themselves. It's about who they surround themselves with. And this shows that, Joe Biden wants to surround himself with lots of different and diverse perspectives. And, this right now, I'm just reminded of a post that Joe Biden put up about commemorating the month of Muharram, which is a very meaningful and a very somber time for a lot of Muslims. And I thought that the tone that he struck was so perfect, so, appropriate for the moment. And I was really moved by that because, as others have said, you're not really, it's something that's done to show the inclusivity, and it's done to show the values that a person has. And, as an elected official, what I've learned to believe is that the values of the elected official are more important than anything, because the different specificities of what problems are going to be thrown their way, nobody knows. Nobody knew that I was going to be faced with COVID as a mayor, that I would face a pandemic, but people knew, or they had a sense of the values that I had and how I would apply those values in this situation. And so similarly, I think it's so important for us to know the values of our elected officials. And so, this selection, this ticket to me is all about the positive values that I want to see represented by my country.
Thank you, Mayor. So I think it was only fitting that Mayor and Ani would touch a little bit on that. We do want to get to the audience. I mean, a lot of questions are coming in and they really want to interact with all of you. Starting with the first question that we received from the audience, what are the most impactful ways for an average voter to raise South Asian turnout in an election? Basically, there are many concerns that will my vote be counted amongst South Asians, and how do we make sure that vote is counted? So I'll open it up to hear from Mussab, Farooq, and Assad first, and then we'll come back around to Mayor Jaffar and Ani.
Yeah, again, I'll try to be brief because I think our elders here know so much more, and they've been so much more experienced with this stuff. But I think personally, the biggest thing, especially in the South Asian communities, is that we have hubs where we congregate. So whether that's a mandir, or whether that's a mosque, or whether that's, just a place where people go to play cricket, we have these places where people congregate. And I think those are the places where you need to be raising awareness and talking to people, because it's those one-on-one conversations that really can change the minds of individuals. I mean, just going online and sharing something on Facebook is great, but it's really the conversations you have with people you might not know that I think can really change the way that they see an election.
Farooq, yeah, and then
Yeah, I can jump in. So I think a few things. One is we've got to have a plan to go vote because we don't know we don't know what the Trump side's capable of doing, just to be blunt, right? So have a plan. Go to iwillvote.com. And if you're in a state that has early voting, go vote early. If you're voting absentee or mail-in, maybe you can drop it off in person, but have a plan as to what you're going to do. And to help turn out the vote, phone banking, texting, digital organizing, go to joebiden.com and there's a Muslim coalition page or an AAPI coalition page where you can sign up and we can actually get you plugged in from the campaign side as well.
Is there anybody else that wants to add?
Yeah, so I'll just add to that real quickly. Agreed fully, and I appreciate Mussab calling me an elder. Thank you. This election, it's more important than ever to know how to vote. It's varied state by state because of the coronavirus crisis, so it's very important to get the information. Here in New Jersey, everybody will be sent in a mail-in ballot. You will get it in the mail. There will be a limited number of polling places. About half the polling places will be open. So that information you can call your county clerk if you need to. There's other websites, as Farooq pointed out, but your county clerk in each county knows that information. You will receive a mail-in ballot at home. The surefirest way to get your vote counted is to fill out that ballot, and then you can put it in the mail, and that's not a problem. And you have every expectation that will get counted. But if you don't trust the mail right now, you can go drop it off either in person at a polling site on election day, or before that, you can drop it off at drop boxes. There will be specific drop boxes, like at your county building and some other locations. Again, your county clerk will have that information where you can drop off your ballot and have full confidence that it will be counted. But the number one thing to do is to learn the rules, to learn how to vote, and then call all your contacts. We have the cell phones, we have the WhatsApp groups, we have our Facebook groups, et cetera, et cetera. Reach out. If you can't see people because of everything going on, call people, email them, do everything, go through your chain, and make sure that they get out and vote.
I wanted to add to that just really quickly. I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe today New Jersey has started a check your ballot initiative where you can actually see if your ballot has been counted or received. So you can, be sure that your vote's counted.
And I want to add as well that New Jersey just started online voter registration. So, send that link to your friends, because we know that our communities also, a lot of people just aren't registered. So that's the first step. Make sure that everyone is registered to vote. And then, yes, they will receive their mail-in ballot. I also think it's really important for us to not allow Trump to make us feel insecure about our election process. That's what he wants. He wants us to not trust in our elections. And so I try to make people as calm as possible and say that, there is no reason to be afraid. Voter fraud is not a problem in the US. You just need to return your ballot as soon as possible and then check and make sure that it has been counted. And paper ballots are very, very safe. A lot of states do mail-in ballots on the regular, so there's no reason to kind of buy into the hysteria. And that's what he's trying to spread. So remain calm, keep calm and return your ballot. That would be my message to New Jersey voters and voters throughout the country.
Thank you, Mayor Jaffar. I do want to get to just a few more audience questions, maybe one more if time allows itself, because I know we're running up on the end of the program. Basically, another question from an audience member came in, and I'll try to merge these two. How do we encourage more South Asians to volunteer their time in politics? And more so, how do we get more South Asians to run for office? I think a lot of us, when we see a Mayor Jaffar, we see Freeholder Akhter or Mussab Ali, we see Anjum part of the decision-making team, and then Farooq Mitha down and engaging Muslim voters during the Biden campaign. It's quite invigorating. It's inspiring. And how do we get more of that? we'll start with Freeholder Akhter, and then we'll go to Mussab, and then Farooq, and then Mayor Jaffar and Anjum.
Yeah, I mean, just real quickly, I mean, again, when I was coming up, there were very few examples. I think everybody on this call who is involved in this is open and willing to mentor others. So, reaching out to people, and it doesn't have to be Muslim American, reach out to other elected officials, reach out to the people who are involved. And, especially in the Democratic Party, I think it's important. And I think we consider part of what we do to help bring up the next generation and encourage young people and encourage people who are not necessarily involved in the system to get involved in the system. We win elections when more people are involved, when more people vote, and when more people are engaged. That's absolutely true of the Democratic Party. So I think we create more of the examples here by being involved, but don't be afraid. The number one reason I hear people saying they don't want to run for office or they don't want to be involved is that they're afraid to put themselves out there. I'm not talking about as a Muslim American, I'm just talking about personally. They're afraid to put themselves out there. And let me tell you, the people who are elected officials, the people who help make the decisions, they are not necessarily the best and brightest. They are the people who showed up. They are the people who showed up and put themselves forward. So do not let your own personal anxieties and fears get in the way of you making a contribution and being a part of the necessary change that we need in this country. We need people to be more involved, not less involved. So you have to get past any of those anxieties you have.
Yeah, I would agree with Freeholder Akhter. I mean, I think, people getting involved is so important. And I think the other part of it is I think people need to realize there's not one profession for running for office. I mean, even among the panelists here, right, we have people with such diverse backgrounds where typically, I mean, I think the people we look at running for office are like lawyers. I mean, I'm fortunate to be going to law school, so I don't want to talk badly about lawyers, but at the same time, right, I mean, there's so many different kinds of people who can run for office, people who are researchers, people who are in the medical industry, people who are, just parents and just want to get involved. And I think people should realize that, the way politics it functions now is changing, right? You don't have to be someone who has all these credentials and all these lines on your resume to be someone who's successful in running for elected office. You just have to be someone who's willing to get to know people, willing to put yourself out there. And that's the way that, we're going to get more communities involved and be a more structurally sound democracy.
So did somebody else want to take
Oh,
a
I
crack
was just
at
going to
that?
say, just get involved with your local party. If you have a community that wants to have an elected official, make a little group. Say, okay, one of us is going to run. The other person's going to be the campaign manager. The other person's going to be the treasurer. Like, support each other, because too often we just get very competitive and, we're not happy when we see someone from our community succeed all the time. So we need to really think about the common good, as has been shared so many times on this call. And if you see someone who's really competent, ask for them to run, because I know for women, research has shown they have to be asked 3 times to run for office. So I'm asking everyone who's listening to this call today to consider running for office at some point. We need your voices.
Righty. Thank you so much, Mayor Jaffar. And with that being said, I do want to ask this final question, but at the same time, ask each panelist to quickly give their ending remarks as we are coming upon closing the panel. The final question came from Michigan. How do we talk to our Trump friends to vote for Biden? And, with that being said, I'll turn it over to each of the panelists to give their answer, but at the same time, give their ending remark as well. We can start with Farooq.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think this election is beyond Democrat and Republican, and we have to talk to these the Trump supporters that we know and say, hey, what are the values that this country stands for? And what do we want the future of this country to be like? Are we going to use our Department of Justice to be the lawyer for the president, or is it going to be a lawyer for the people? And I think if we can appeal to a common sense of the values of what this democracy represents globally, I think that is one way to maybe appeal to some people. Although I think it's going to be hard, but we should definitely try. Oh, and my closing statements, by the way. Yeah, sorry about that. Look, we don't have a lot of time. I think somebody said earlier, 55 days. I think after today, 54 days. It's coming really fast. And people are starting to vote literally in the next couple of weeks. in some battleground states. Whatever we can do to turn out the vote, especially in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, Florida, Ohio, and even maybe Texas. I mean, we're close in Texas. We have to do whatever we can, make the phone calls, send the texts, do whatever you got to do to convince people to go vote. That's it.
Yeah. So I'll just say that, you know, there's two types of Trump voters. I mean, I would say just broadly, there are the Republicans who will vote, you know, for the Republican Party and feel that they need to vote for Donald Trump because he is the quote unquote conservative voice, or he's carrying, you know, the banner for the GOP. And I think you're seeing, you know, through the Lincoln Project and others, there are Republicans of conscience who are saying it doesn't matter whether we are in the same party or not, that as Americans, we cannot in good conscience support somebody who is so morally corrupt and who has had such an incompetent administration. And so I think those people can be convinced if people are voting for him strictly because they've always voted Republican. And I think people like that are being convinced that there is a better way, and that Joe Biden is somebody that they can trust and believe in, and at least hope that our country will be run in even if they can't agree with them on every issue, they agree that they believe that he is somebody who will at least have a competent and somebody the country can be proud of. The second class of Trump voters are people who don't even care about the issues, or, you know, they may care about issues, but they don't care whether he's on their side or not. They just like his attitude. And there are people in the Muslim community, and there are people in other communities who feel that way as Trump voters. And a lot of times it's about attitude, not about issues. And sometimes some of us, we enjoy arguing with those people. We enjoy that argument more than we enjoy agreeing with other people. It feels good for us to unload on those people and waste our time, quite honestly, trying to convince those people. If you have one of those people who, no matter what argument you give them, they're with Trump, then move on. Move on. Don't worry about that group or that class of people. You know, that's their responsibility to show up on election day. We got to go gather up the other people. There's always more people who, especially in our community, who for whatever reason decide not to vote. Not that they're not with us, but they decide not to vote. Go get those people. And I'll just close on this remark. And thanks to all the organizers. Thanks to everybody who's listening and all that. All I will say is, if you don't remember why it's important, and you think your vote doesn't matter, and you think it doesn't really matter who's elected, remember, this is the election for the most important person or the most powerful person in the world. Lives are at stake. When George W. Bush was reelected president, thousands of Americans lost their lives in Iraq for a battle, for a cause that was not worthy of their sacrifice. Those Americans will never regain their lives. There are thousands of Americans, we know that, probably tens of thousands of Americans who would still be alive if we had a different administration, if we had a Hillary Clinton administration right now dealing with this coronavirus epidemic. That is a fact. Lives are at stake. It's not just about politics. It's not about Democrat, Republican. People will live and die and will gain and lose, and we will see either prosperity or misfortune based on who the next president is. So don't forget that when you work and think about this election. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Freeholder. Mayor Jaffar, if you want to take it away.
For me, I just try to provide some information. Like, I always go back to this educational mission that, you know, even if I don't change the person's mind, maybe I can give them some information. And I would say that the Biden campaign's website has so much information. So if someone uses one of Trump's usual talking points, you know, that I'm good for the economy or I'm good for small business, you can show Joe Biden's agenda for small businesses, for the economy. Or if they say, well, he wouldn't do anything different for COVID, you can share his plans for how he would deal with COVID recovery. Or if they say, you know, well, what is he going to do different for Muslim Americans? You can share his agenda for Muslim Americans. If they say, you know, what is he going to do different for Asian Americans? So I just try to share some information and make people aware that there is actual content. You know, the Democratic platform and Joe Biden's platform has content to it. It's a very sad fact that the Republican Party's platform this year doesn't really have content beyond we support Donald Trump. So, you know, people might not, unfortunately, I think the media does not do a very good job of informing people of like the actual facts, because it gets so confused in all of the sound bites. So just try to share some information, but also, yes, as you know, Freeholder Akhter said, cut your losses after some certain point. Just say, okay, well, you know, I'm sorry that, you know, you feel this way, but I have to move on with my work. And what we really need to do is mobilize those people who are undecided, or who support Biden but are not going to make the effort to vote. That's who we need to get out to vote. Not that we should really be spending so much of our energies at this point trying to convince an actual Trump supporter to vote for Joe Biden.
I think I can close off next. I think when I run into someone who has their heart set on voting for Trump, I always try to use the scare tactic, like you could be next, because this is a president who can't make up his mind about anything. I mean, just look at COVID. It's bad. It's not bad. Wear a mask. Don't wear a mask. Yay for China. No for China. You know, and how soon until you're on that list? And in closing, I've been tweeting the same thing throughout the whole, you know, this webinar and previously, like, start at the grassroots level. Your vote does count. Your participation does count. It's the small things that matter, and vote. And if everybody can make it a personal responsibility to get 5 other people to vote with them, we would be so much more mobilized than we are right now. And with that, thank you for having me, and Assalamu alaikum.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to all the panelists. Thank you to South Asians for Binding for putting this together, and everyone who's watched throughout tonight. And I just want to close, and I just want to say, I want people to try to remember what it felt like 4 years ago in November of 2016, when we saw that Donald Trump had won the election. And, you know, I remember my heart just sinking, thinking about what was going to happen. And then in 2017, the Muslim ban was passed, and we had tons of legislation that was very directly opposed to our communities, opposed to American values, and really just, you know, destructive towards the fabric of our American society. And if you don't want that to continue, if you want 4 years where we can, you know, come together as a community, as a society, and take America and really explore its potential, right? Explore what it means to have the American dream, then you need to vote for Joe Biden, and you need to, you know, encourage people to feel the same way. And I think it's important for people to get really passionate about this, because we cannot stand another 4 years. Honestly, I think that, you know, another 4 years of the Trump presidency, the damage that he can cause to our democratic system, I think it might be irreparable. And so I think it's important for all of us to really get involved in this cause. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I think you hit the nail on the head. I think another 4 years of Donald Trump is going to be as worse as his back pain from sitting so much during this hour and a half presentation. And thank you all for being such troopers with all of us on the panel, for listening in and hearing the many great experiences, the political journeys, and their expectations going into November. Here, as touched on it earlier, we're 55 days out, about to be 54 from electing Joe Biden for president and Kamala Harris for vice president. And I think we can take a lot from this evening. And I think Ani said it best, right? She said a call to action: find 5 friends and take them to the polls, you know, do something, get out the vote in November. With that being said, I want to turn it back over to Hira to close us out. And thank you all once again for joining us. Thank you to all the panelists for taking the time out this evening.
Thank you so much, Intashan. Thank you to all our panelists as well. And also thank you to our viewers for being here for the last hour and a half, listening, sending really, really great questions. I'm so excited that we had this level of engagement from our community. Something that, before I give you all calls to action in terms of what our next steps are, something that I think was really important that Mayor Jaffar brought up was a sense of responsibility. It's something that is so ingrained in our community from childhood, a sense of responsibility to be kind, to give charity, et cetera. And unfortunately, we don't always translate that over to the political world in terms of responsibility to mobilize our community, engage our community. So everybody on this panel is a North Star in terms of political engagement and activism. You're all incredibly esteemed, accomplished in your ways, but I want to encourage the audience to say, even if you are not going to be running for office this year or in the next year, you still can have a huge impact for this election and for any upcoming election. As Annie said, you can simply reach out to 5 people. You can join organizations like SAP and conduct phone banking in swing states to other South Asian voters. And the difference there is, it's a South Asian person calling another South Asian voter, knowing how to pronounce their name, saying, hi, I go to this masjid, my name is such and such, I'm also South Asian. And that has so much more of an impact than them getting a call from somebody who is not South Asian. That's the level of interconnectedness of our community. So I want to impress upon you the importance of that call to action, to phone bank, to write postcards where you can, and to get involved with organizations like SAB, with Muslims for Biden, with AAPIs for Biden. With that being said, you're going to be seeing a slide very shortly, which will have all of our contact information on it. The things I want to call out there specifically are, number one, our email, the South Asians for Biden email. We are desperately looking for volunteers right now because we're going into the mobilization phase of the campaign. As many people have said, in New Jersey, voting starts very, very soon. In September, ballots will start going out. So we need to have people on the phone calling people, chasing down their ballots, and making sure we're saying, return your ballot. But also, if you're in New Jersey, you can call people in other states as well, including some of the swing states that Farooq mentioned earlier, Wisconsin, Michigan, et cetera. Finally, we're going to have links to our social as well, so please follow us for updates in terms of more events, what types of phone banking events we're going to be having, and even if you can do just an hour of phone banking between now and election day, that is more than enough. But if you can do more than that, of course, that is very welcome as well. So thank you again to all our panelists. Thank you for joining us. Let's keep this energy going through November and win this thing. And assalamu alaikum.